Chapter 23. Jacques Thibaud. The Ideal Program. Jacques Thibaud, whose gifts as an interpreting artist have brought him so many friends and admirers in the United States, is the foremost representative of the modern French school of violin playing. And as such he has held his own ever since. At the age of 20, he resigned his rank as concert master of the Colon Orchestra, to dedicate his talents exclusively to the concert stage. So great an authority as the last edition of the Riemann Music Lexicon cannot forbear, even in 1915, to emphasize his technique, absolutely developed in its every detail, and his fiery and poetic manner of interpretation. But Mr. Thibaud does not see any great difference between the ideals of La Grande École Belge, that of Vuitton, de Baillot, Léonard, Massot, and Marsic, whose greatest present-day exponent is Eugène Issay, and the French. Himself a pupil of Marsic, he inherited the French traditions of Aled through his father, who was Aled's pupil and handed them on to his son. The two schools have married and are as one, declared Mr. Thibaud. They may differ in the interpretation of music, but to me they seem to have merged so far as their systems of finger technique, bowing and tone production goes. The greatest difficulty to overcome. You ask me what is most difficult in playing the violin. It is bowing. Bowing makes up approximately 80% of the sum total of violinistic difficulties. One reason for it is that many teachers with excellent ideas on the subject present it to their pupils in too complicated a manner. The bow must be used in an absolutely natural way, and over-elaboration in explaining what should be a simple and natural development often prevents the student from securing a good bowing, the end in view. Sarasate, he was an intimate friend of mine, always used his bow in the most natural way. His control of it was unsought and unconscious. Were I a teacher I should not say, you must bow as I do, but rather, find the way of bowing most convenient and natural to you and use it. Bowing is largely a physical and individual matter. I am slender but have long, large fingers. Chrysler is a larger man than I am but his fingers are small. It stands to reason that there must be a difference in the way in which we hold and use the bow. The difference between a great and a mediocre teacher lies in the fact that the first recognizes that bowing is an individual matter, different in the case of each individual pupil, and that the greatest perfection is attained by the development of the individual's capabilities within his own norm. Marsic as a teacher. Marsic was a teacher of this type. At each of the lessons I took from him at the conservatoire, we went to him 3 days a week. He would give me a new étude, Gavinese, Rode, Fiorillo, Don't, to prepare for the next lesson. We also studied all of Paganini, and works by Ernst and Spohr. For our bow technique he employed difficult passages made into études. Scales, the violinist's daily bread, we practiced day in, day out. Marsic played the piano well, and could improvise marvelous accompaniments on his violin when his pupils played. I continued my studies with Marsic even after I left the conservatoire. With him I believe that 3 essentials, absolute purity of pitch, equality of tone and sonority of tone, in connection with the bow, are the base on which everything else rests. The mechanical versus the natural in violin playing. Sevcic's purely soulless and mechanical system has undoubtedly produced a number of excellent mechanicians of the violin. But it has just as unquestionably killed real talent. Kubelik, there was a genuinely talented violinist. If he had had another teacher instead of Sevcic he would have been great, for he had great gifts. Even as it was he played well, but I consider him one of Sevcic's victims. As an illustration of how the technical point of view is thrust to the fore by this system I remember some 15 years ago Kubelik, and I was staying at the same villa in Monte Carlo, where we were to play the Beethoven concerto, each of us, in concert, 2 days apart. Kubelik spent the livelong day before the concert practicing Sevcic exercises. I read and studied Beethoven's score, but did not touch my violin. I went to hear Kubelik play the concerto, and he played it well, but then, so did I, when my turn came. And I feel sure I got more out of it musically and spiritually, than I would have if instead of concentrating on its meaning, its musical message, I had prepared the concerto as a problem in violin mechanics whose key was contained in a number of dry technical exercises arbitrarily laid down. Technique, in the case of the more advanced violinist, should not have a place in the foreground of his consciousness. I heard Rubinstein play when a boy. What did his false notes amount to compared with his wonderful manner of disclosing the spirit of the things he played? Plant, the Parisian pianist, a kind of keyboard cyclone, once expressed the idea admirably to an English society lady. She had told him he was a greater pianist than Rubinstein, because the latter played so many wrong notes. "Ah, madam," answered Plant, "I would rather be able to play Rubinstein's wrong notes than all my own correct ones." A violinist's natural manner of playing is the one he should cultivate, since it is individual, it really represents him. And a teacher or a colleague of greater fame does him no kindness if he encourages him to distrust his own powers by too good-naturedly showing him how to do this, that or the other. I mean, when the student can work out his problem himself at the expense of a little initiative. When I was younger I once had to play Bach's G minor fugue at a concert in Brussels. I was living at Issei's home, and since I had never played the composition in public before, I began to worry about its interpretation. So I asked Issei, thinking he would simply show me, how ought I to play this fugue. The master reflected a moment and then dashed my hopes by answering, "Tu m'embêtes. You bore me, this fugue should be played well, that's all." At first I was angry, but thinking it over, I realized that if he had shown me, I would have played it just as he did, while what he wanted me to do was to work out my own version, and depend on my own initiative, which I did, for I had no choice. It is by means of concentration on the higher, the interpretative phases of one's art that the technical side takes its proper, secondary place. Technique does not exist for me in the sense of a certain quantity of mechanical work which I must do. I find it out of the question to do absolutely mechanical technical work of any length of time. In realizing the three essentials of good violin playing which I have already mentioned, Issei and Sarasate are my ideals. Sarasate. All really good violinists are good artists. Sarasate, whom I knew so intimately and remember so well, was a pupil of Allard, my father's teacher. He literally sang on the violin, like a nightingale. His purity of intonation was remarkable, and his technical facility was the most extraordinary that I have ever seen. He handled his bow with unbelievable skill. And when he played, the unassuming grace of his movements won the hearts of his audiences and increased the enthusiasm awakened by his tremendous talent. We other violinists, all of us, occasionally play a false note, for we are not infallible, we may flat a little or sharp a little. But never, as often as I have heard Sarasate play, did I ever hear him play a wrong note, one not in perfect pitch. His Spanish things he played like a god. And he had a wonderful gift of phrasing which gave a charm hard to define to whatever he played. And playing in quartet, the greatest solo violinist does not always shine in this genre, he was admirable. Though he played all the standard repertory, Bach, Beethoven, etc., I can never forget his exquisite rendering of modern works, especially of a little composition by Raff, called La Fée d'amour. He was the first to play the violin concertos of Saint-Saëns, Lalo, and Max Bruch. They were all written for him, and I doubt whether they would have been composed had not Sarasate been there to play them. Of course, in his own Spanish music he was unexcelled, a whole school of violin playing was born and died with him. He had a hobby for collecting canes. He had hundreds of them of all kinds, and every sovereign in Europe had contributed to his collection. I know Queen Christina of Spain gave him, no less than 20. He once gave me a couple of his canes, a great sign of favor with him. I have often played quartet with Sarasate, for he adored quartet playing, and these occasions are among my treasured memories. Stradivarius and Guarnerius players. My violin. It is a Stradivarius, the same which once belonged to the celebrated Baillot. I think it is good for a violin to rest, so during the 3 months when I am not playing in concert, I send my Stradivarius away to the instrument makers, and only take it out about a month before I begin to play again in public. What do I use in the meantime? Caressa, the best violin maker in Paris, made me an exact copy of my own Strad, exact in every little detail. It is so good that sometimes, when circumstances compelled me to, I have used it in concert, though it lacks the tone quality of the original. This understudy violin I can use for practice, and when I go back to the original, as far as the handling of the instrument is concerned, I never know the difference. But I do not think that everyone plays to the best advantage on a Strad. I'm a believer in the theory that there are natural Guarnerius players and natural Stradivarius players, that certain artists do their best with the one, and certain others with the other. And I also believe that anyone who is equally good in both, is great on neither. The reason I believe in Guarnerius players and Stradivarius players as distinct is this. Some years ago I had a sudden call to play in a stand. It was a concert engagement which I had overlooked, and when it was recalled to me I was playing golf in Brittany. I at once hurried to Paris to get my violin from Caressa, with whom I had left it, but his safe, in which it had been put, and to which he only had the combination, was locked. Caressa himself was in Milan. I telegraphed him but found that he could not get back in time before the concert to release my violin. So I telegraphed Issei at Namur, to ask if he could loan me a violin for the concert. Certainly he wired back. So I hurried to his home and, with his usual generosity, he insisted on my taking both his treasured Guarnerius and his Hercules Strad, afterwards stolen from him in Russia, in order that I might have my choice. His brother-in-law and some friends accompanied me from Namur to a stand, no great distance, to hear the concert. Well, I played the Guarnerius at rehearsal, and when it was over, everyone said to me, "Why, what is the matter with your fiddle? It was the one Issei always used, it has no tone at all." At the concert I played the Strad and secured a big tone that filled the hall, as everyone assured me. When I brought back the violins to Issei I mentioned the circumstance to him, and he was so surprised and interested that he took them from the cases and played a bit, first on one, then on the other, a number of times. And invariably when he played the Strad, which by the way, he had not used for years, Issei, imagine it, could develop only a small tone, and when he played the Guarnerius, he never failed to develop that great, sonorous tone we all know and love so well. Take Sarasate, when he lived, Elman, myself, we all have the habit of the Stradivarius. On the other hand Issei and Chrysler are Guarnerius players par excellence. Yes, I use a wire E string. Before I found out about them I had no end of trouble. In New Orleans I snapped 7 gut strings at a single concert. Some say that you can tell the difference, when listening, between a gut and a wire E. I cannot, and I know a good many others who cannot. After my last New York recital I had tea with Issei, who had done me the honor of attending it. "What strings do you use?" he asked me, apropos to nothing in particular. When I told him I used a wire E he confessed that he could not have told the difference. And, in fact, he has adopted the wire E just like Chrysler, Maud Powell and others, and has told me that he is charmed with it, for Issei has had a great deal of trouble with his strings. I shall continue to use them even after the war, when it will be possible to obtain good gut strings again. The ideal program. The whole question of programs and program making is an intricate one. In my opinion the usual recital program, piano, song or violin, is too long. The public likes the recital by a single vocal or instrumental artist, and financially and for other practical reasons the artist, too, is better satisfied with them. But are they artistically altogether satisfactory? I should like to hear Podorevsky and Issei, Bauer and Casals, Kreisler and Hoffmann all playing at the same recital. What a variety, what a wealth of contrasting artistic enjoyment such a concert would afford. There is nothing that is so enjoyable for the true artist as ensemble playing with his peers. Solo playing seems quite unimportant beside it. I recall as the most perfect and beautiful of all my musical memories a string quartet and quintet, with piano, session in Paris, in my own home, where we played 4 of the loveliest chamber music works ever written in the following combination: Beethoven's 7th Quartet, Ise, Vo. I, myself, Vo. 2, Kreisler, viola, he plays it remarkably well, and Casals, cello, the Schumann Quartet, Kreisler, Vo. I, Ise, Vo. 2, myself, viola and Casals, cello, and the Mozart G Major Quartet, myself, Vo. I, Kreisler, Vo. 2, Ise, viola and Casals, cello. Then we telephoned to Pugno, who came over and joined us, and, after an excellent dinner, we played the César Franck Piano Quintet. It was the most enjoyable musical day of my life. A concert manager offered us a fortune to play in this combination, just 2 concerts in every capital in Europe. We have not enough variety in our concert programs, not enough collaboration. The truth is, our form of concert, which usually introduces only one instrument or one group of instruments, such as the string quartet, is too uniform in color. I can enjoy playing a recital program of virtuose violin pieces well enough, but I cannot help fearing that many find it too unicolored. Practical considerations do not do away with the truth of an artistic contention, though they may often prevent its realization. What I enjoy most, musically, is to play together with another good artist. That is why I have had such great artistic pleasure in the joint recitals I have given with Harold Bauer. We could play things that were really worthwhile for each of us, for the piano parts of the modern sonatas call for a virtuous technical and musical equipment, and I have had more satisfaction from this ensemble work than I would have had in playing a long list of solo pieces. The ideal violin program, to play in public, as I conceive it, is one that consists of absolute music, or should it contain virtuose pieces, then these should have some definite musical quality of soul, character, elegance or charm to recommend them. I think one of the best programs I have ever played in America is that which I gave with Harold Bauer at Aeolian Hall, New York, during the season of 1917 to 1918. Sonata in B-flat. Mozart. Bauer Thibaut. Scenes from Childhood. Schumann. H. Bauer. Poem. E. Chausson. J. Thibaut. Sonata. César Franck. Bauer Thibaut. Or perhaps this other, which Bauer and I played in Boston, during November, 1913. Kreutzer Sonata. Beethoven. Bauer Thibaut. Sarabanda, Giger, Chacon. J. S. Bach. J. Thibaut. Chrysleriana. Schumann. H. Bauer. Sonata. César Franck Bauer Thibaut. Either of these programs is artistic from the standpoint of the compositions represented. And even these programs are not too short, they take almost 2 hours to play, while for my ideal program an hour and a half of beautiful music would suffice. You will notice that I believe in playing the big, fine things in music, in serving roasts rather than too many hors d'oeuvres and pastry. On a solo program, of course, one must make some concessions. When I play a violin concerto it seems fair enough to give the public 3 or 4 nice little things, but, always pieces which are truly musical, not such as are only ear ticklers. Kreisler, he has a great talent for transcription, has made charming arrangements. So has Tivadar Notches, of Older Things, and Arthur Hartmann. These one can play as well as shorter numbers by Vuitton and Wieniawski that are delightful, such as the former's Ballade et Polonaise, though I know of musical purists who disapprove of it. I consider this Polonaise on a level with Chopin's. Or take, in the virtuoso field, Sarasate's gypsy airs, they are equal to any Liszt rhapsody. I have only recently discovered that Issei, my lifelong friend, has written some wonderful original compositions, a poem élégiaque, a chant d'hiver, an extase and a mise trio for 2 violins and alto that is marvelous. These pieces were an absolute find for me, with the exception of the lovely chant d'hiver, which I have already played in Paris, Brussels, Amsterdam, and Berlin, and expect to make a feature of my programs this winter. You see, Issei is so modest about his own compositions that he does not attempt to push them, even with his friends, hence they are not nearly as well known as they should be. I never play operatic transcriptions and never will. The music of the opera, no matter how fine, appears to me to have its proper place on the stage. It seems out of place on the violin recital program. The artist cannot be too careful in the choice of his shorter program pieces. And he can profit by the example set by some of the foremost violinists of the day. Issei, that great apostle of the truly musical, is a shining example. It is sad to see certain young artists of genuine talent disregard the remarkable work of their great contemporary, and secure easily gained triumphs with compositions whose musical value is nil. Sometimes the wish to educate the public, to give it a high standard of appreciation, leads an artist astray. I heard a well-known German violinist play in Berlin 5 years ago, and what do you suppose played? Beethoven's trios transcribed for violin and piano. The last thing in the world to play. And there was, to my astonishment, no critical disapproval of what he did. I regard it as little less than a crime. But this whole question of programs and repertory is one without end. Which of the great concertos do I prefer? That is a difficult question to answer offhand. But I can easily tell you which I like least. It is the Tchaikovsky Violin Concerto. I would not exchange the first 10 measures of Vuittom's 4th Concerto for the whole of Tchaikovsky's, that is from the musical point of view. I have heard the Tchaikovsky played magnificently by Auer and by Elman, but I consider it the worst thing the composer has written.